Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. My name is Layla if you are new here. If you don't know, I absolutely love books. I love reading, mostly nonfiction and personal development books. So I really wanted to start creating videos on book reviews, all the books that I read from here on out. I probably will create individual videos per book. Let me know if you're interested in that. But because I didn't do this for 2020, I'm gonna do a review on all of the books that I read in 2020. Just talk about them each briefly and share some of my favorite lines from them. This video in particular is going to be only the nonfiction books, and then I'm gonna create another video for the fiction books. In 2020, I read a total of 16 books and 11 of those were nonfiction. I've been obsessed with personal development for years now, and so I really enjoy reading personal development books and business books, finance books. Anything that makes me a better person, I really appreciate. Even if I don't remember every single thing from them, there's always something that I take away from it. They just make me feel good or I learn something from them. So these are the 11 that I read in 2020. And also, if you didn't know, I didn't know Spend Year. I have a separate YouTube channel on finances, and that's always linked in the description box if you're interested in that. But I didn't know Spend Year. So one thing off limits for me was purchasing books. So I took a ton of walks and found little free libraries around the city that I live in. You may have those around your town as well. They're just little wooden shelves or little wooden cubbies. I don't know what you would call it, but they have books in them. People put them in, you can take one, leave one, bring it back, and I think it's really cool. I found the bulk of these from those, and some of these books I actually reread, so I already had them. I am going to share a couple of my favorite lines from each book, or at least the ones that I want to share, and on my blog I do have a whole post reviewing these books, so if you're interested in more quotes or any more detail about the book, go to the link in my bio for that blog post, and all of these books will also be linked down below. So let's just get right into it. Number 1, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. This is what I started 2020 with. I have actually read this book before, and it is a classic. I think it is worth purchasing. It's worth having the hard copy of and rereading it over and over again. This is just such a good book. It's by Joseph Murphy, and as you can see, I tabbed it quite a bit, and outside of that I highlighted even more so. So there were many gems in this book, and it's something that I like to look back on regularly actually, and I would read this over and over again, probably once a year, because it is just that good. I do believe that our minds are super powerful and we have a lot more control over our life than we think we do, and this really just does a good job of capturing that and explaining how to do that and believing in yourself. I also really love books that were written many, many years ago on topics like this, because I feel like these people were abnormal at that time. Like, they were just living ahead of people, because I don't think people really started realizing the power of our minds until more recently, and even now people don't realize. So I just think these people were really ahead of their time. Not that this book is hundreds of years old, but for its time it's pretty significant, and it's just such a good read. Definitely read this one. I have my laptop here because I wrote down all of my favorite quotes from this book, and there's so many, so I'm not going to go through them all because I'll be here all day. But let's see, I'll read a few of them. The way to get rid of darkness is with light. The way to overcome cold is with heat. The way to overcome the negative thought is to substitute the good thought. Do not let yourself get bogged down in thinking about details and means. Know what the end result will be. Get the feel of the happy solution to your problem, whether it is health, finances, or personal relationships. Remember how you felt after you recovered from a serious illness. Bear in mind that your feeling is the touchstone of all subconscious demonstration. Your new idea must be felt subjectively in a finished state, felt not as something that may come to pass in the future, but as something that is actually coming to pass at this moment. Look at money like the tide, and you will always have plenty of it. The ebb and flow of the tide is constant. When the tide is out, you are absolutely sure that it will return. So this book literally covers everything. If you want to attract health, finances, relationship, whatever it is, there's something in here for you, and all of the information in it can be applied to each of those areas. So yes, just read it. The next book I read was Girl Code by Cara Alwill-Leyba. And I had actually asked for this book for Christmas, and my mom gifted it to me. I had wanted to read it for a while. There was actually a time in 2019 where I became really obsessed with Cara, and I like read all of her content. I listened to all of her podcasts, and I just really liked what her message was about. So I wanted to read her book. Now, I really don't listen to her much anymore. I think she is vegan and an activist for animals, so that's really cool too. That's why I also started liking her more. But I don't listen to her stuff much anymore, and I think it's because this is too beginner for me. Her content is a little bit too beginner for me. Maybe not her podcast. Some of it can be for somebody who's more advanced in their personal development journey, but that's what I felt with this book. So this book has great content. I love the way she writes. It was really interesting, and it's definitely like girl boss vibes, and you know, just telling you not to take anything, just believe in yourself and do what it is that you want to do. She also interviewed women in every chapter, like women entrepreneurs or athletes, or I can't remember exactly, but I know she was interviewing at the end of each chapter a different woman, and I thought it was just interesting to see their stories and their answers to what she asked. But to me, it was too beginner. I consider myself advanced in my personal development journey. I've been doing this for years. So this was just very elementary to me. I didn't really learn anything from it or feel empowered from it because I already live up to these things, you know? So if you're a beginner on your personal development journey, for sure, this is a great book. She's also a great writer and podcast creator. So you can check her out that way for, you know, if you don't want to purchase the book, but I do love the cover. The next book I read was 10% Happier by Dan Harris. And Dan Harris, if you don't know, he's the one who had a panic attack. He's a news anchor. He had a panic attack on live television. You can search this on YouTube and find it. And it's not a panic attack where he's like breathing heavily and freaking out. It's just he like stumbles over his words, and you can tell that he's like, what is even happening with my body right now? But he goes into quite a bit of detail leading up to that experience in his life. Obviously, that's pretty traumatic for somebody to go through on live television, and he talks about his drug use, his stress, partying, just the whole aspect of the career he's in. And I thought it was interesting to read his story. He is a good storyteller, but ultimately what this book is about meditation. And I think I bought this book maybe in 2018 or 2019, but it says how I tamed the voice in my head, reduced stress without losing my edge, and found self-help that actually works, a true story. You guys know I love meditation. That's something I do just about every single day, and it has helped me pretty significantly. It's something I do really appreciate in my life and like to implement because it helps me to be a better person. So he goes into more detail about that. He shares his experience with like a silent retreat, if I recall, and then shares some conversations and interviews with people who believe in meditation or incorporate it in their life. So if you need any more convincing that meditation is really good for you, then this is a good one. I only tabbed one page in this book and highlighted this section, so I'm gonna read that to you. Dropping the attachment is the real trick. Striving is fine as long as it's tempered by the realization that in an entropic universe, the final outcome is out of your control. If you don't waste your energy on variables you cannot influence, you can focus much more effectively on those you can. When you are wisely ambitious, you do everything you can to succeed, but you are not attached to the outcome. So that if you fail, you will be maximally resilient, able to get up, dust yourself off, and get back in the fray. That is the only thing I highlighted from this book, so obviously it stuck out to me. After that, I read Grit by Angela Duckworth. I also asked for this for my birthday one year. I got it in 2019 from my sister, and I had started reading it in 2019 but never finished, so I restarted it in 2020. And this is literally what I live by. Not the book per se, but grit. To be honest, I take a lot of pride in my grit, my passion, my perseverance, my consistency, because that is who I am as a person. I focus on what it is that I want to do in my life, and I just keep on doing that, even if I'm not necessarily succeeding at it in other people's eyes or maybe even in my own eyes. So for example, this YouTube channel, I continue to produce content for it even though it is not going where I expected it to go. I still create content for my blog and promote it and push it even though I'm not a full-time blogger yet, and that's what I expected. I know what I want in life, and so I persevere and just keep pushing through all the obstacles that I experienced in my journey. And so I would consider myself somebody who has grit. And I think that's why I wanted to read this book, just because, you know, it's pretty cool to me that we don't need talent and all these skills necessarily to be successful. It's more so about just being consistent and continuing to show up, not give up, so that you will eventually get there, you know? And that's what my whole life is about. So I do have a couple of things tabbed. Oh, I know that I really like this story about, what was his name? Robert Mankoff. So she told a story of Robert Mankoff, and I remember being, you know, this connected well with me. After getting rejected from the New Yorker about 2,000 times between 1974 and 1977, Bob, Robert Mankoff, sent in the cartoon below. This one. It was accepted. The next year, he sold 13 cartoons to the New Yorker, then 25 the following year, then 27. In 1981, Bob received a letter from the magazine asking if he'd consider becoming a contract cartoonist. He said yes. So that's one of those things where it's like, I don't know if you've heard me talk about it here before, but one of my favorite books is Think and Grow Rich, and he has one of the sections is titled 3 feet from gold, and that is like my life motto. Like I never want to give up. I am 3 feet from gold. If I just keep going, it's right there, because you never know what day or what little thing you are going to do that is going to allow you to reach that gold, and whatever that is for you. I also had tabbed a thing about like growth mindset. I really love a growth mindset. I have a blog post on it, which is one of my favorites that I've ever written, and I appreciated her talking a lot about that. This book has a lot of scientific research in it when it comes to perseverance, and I think that was interesting. It is more of a informational or educational book than it is like super motivating, but I think if it's something that you want to incorporate in your life, that it's definitely worth the read. Next is Hustle, and this one's by Neil Patel, Patrick Vlaskovitz, and Jonas Koffler. And I got this book at a little free library, and I was very excited. The cover pulled me in right away. It's bright yellow and it says hustle. Love that. However, hustle is a strong term, and so I looked this up on Amazon first before picking it up, and it had pretty good reviews. So I gave it a shot, and I'm glad I read it. I really enjoy it. I know that a lot of people believe hustle culture or whatever, just hustle is toxic, and I don't believe that. I think hustle is a very individual term, because you can still be a hustler and get enough sleep and, you know, have a healthy life and a happy life. The term, it's all relative, you know, it's just about your perspective and how you see things. You can still put in a lot of effort and be really productive and hustle, but still have balance in your life, at least, you know, for what your priorities are. I really don't think hustle is a toxic thing. It's just like self-improvement. Some people think that's toxic, and it's not, you know, it's just about what you believe and who you are as a person. I tabbed this up quite a bit, and that's also because so much of this book represents what I believe and what I stand for. And even, I think I read this book after I launched my goal achievement course, and so much of it had what I talked about in that course. So I thought that was pretty cool. This book did really motivate me to take action. I wouldn't really say that I necessarily learned something new from it, because like I said, I'm pretty far along my personal development journey, but it's still like just reading the content of it is really motivating. I'm also not a huge fan of Neil Patel. I don't know why, I'm just not, but I did like this book. So I'm gonna read a few of the lines. Think for the life you want, not the life you have. To be loyal to our personal hustle, we must willingly betray our old self so that our new self gains momentum. The truth has nothing to do with 10,000 hours or grinding it out. The hidden truth is in always keeping the wheels turning, because momentum, the willful act of doing, is our secret weapon, our equalizer. Always has been, always will be. And absolutely, momentum is so important, just getting started. I will put up a photo of this on my blog if you want to go check it out, because it's a really good little diagram. This page, 219, I really resonated with it, because this is kind of how I feel. So it says, what if, beyond the surface, deep down, you really liked the challenge of showing up, of taking the early meeting, of driving the old clunker, of doing things that tested you, pushed you to solve problems in new ways? What if the annoyances and frustrations of the day-to-day were instead things you could feel grateful for, things that gave you a sense that you had real work to do and were connected to a bigger community of dream owners like you. This is exactly how I feel, because like I do so much in my life, especially before when I was actually having to go to work. But a lot of people have questioned how I do all that I do, like going to work and running a blog and a YouTube channel, multiple YouTube channels, and multiple blogs. And this is why, like, I like that. I like that challenge of doing more than it seems possible. So I really resonated with that. I don't know if any of you feel that way. And here's one more. The process of going from what you are today to what you are to become takes time. And the truth is, it never ends. So I'm all about living for your future self. Obviously, you want to be happy in the present and, you know, do things for the now as well. But your future self should be a priority too. Next book I read was The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. And I actually had started reading this some point in 2018, I believe, because my sister had it and she was like selling it, and then it sold, so I couldn't finish it. It's actually a really long book and took me quite some time to read. And if you don't know, I've listened to hours of Dave Ramsey, especially when I started my debt-free journey. And I can tell you, like, whatever the question is, I can tell you the answer to on Dave Ramsey's terms, because I've listened to it so much. And I don't stick to everything he says. I don't follow exactly his little baby steps, but it's a great place to start, especially with this book. It did have a lot more information than he talks about on his YouTube channel or on his podcast. So I was excited to get my hands on this. Again, it was from a free library. So I do recommend this if you're getting started on your debt-free journey, but you don't necessarily have to stick to exactly his baby steps, because to me, personal finance is personal. So I choose to do things a little bit differently. This book also was filled with stories, like different stories of people getting out of debt, which was so motivating. It was like every other page, and I was so glad that he did that. I don't know if that's only in some versions, but I love hearing stories of people's debt-free journeys. And there was one part of this that I had tabbed, and it's talking about health and finances, and I think the two are both really important. So he says, I have a friend in his 40s who has a bodybuilder physique. He is lean with well-defined muscle groups, but he is not some wild health nut. He watches what he eats and works out a couple of times a week. I have another friend in his 30s who diets fanatically, runs every day, lifts weights 3 times a week, but is still 40 pounds overweight. The second guy started his health journey a couple of years ago and is losing weight and getting in shape. The first muscle man maintains what he worked hard years ago to get, but he isn't working nearly as hard today. The Total Money Makeover is the same way. So basically what it's saying is that what you do now is going to make your future easier when it comes to money. So paying off debt and investing, all that stuff, you're not going to have to work as hard if you start investing now, if you start taking control of your finances now, rather than if you wait until you're 50 and it's going to be a lot more difficult. The same thing applies to health and fitness. A lot of people neglect their health and fitness in the early ages because you don't see immediate effects on your weight or on your health. And then when it comes to their 30s or 40s, they start getting healthy because something really bad happens and it's a lot more difficult, you know? Hustle Harder, Hustle Smarter by Curtis Jackson, aka 50 Cent. This was probably the best book I read this year. I was pleasantly surprised. And I actually purchased this one with an Amazon gift card from my mom for my birthday. 50 Cent is obviously a rapper, music artist, producer, whatever, but he's also an entrepreneur, and I think he's a producer for a show as well. Well, he is a producer, director, one of those. He was also a drug dealer in his younger days, like when he was a young teenager, and he tells stories of that. He talks about how he didn't use drugs because he needed a clear head. Even into his adulthood, he didn't do drugs. He doesn't drink because he needed to hustle. Like, he needed a clear mind for his stuff. And so he would just make the money and respect the grind of that and not do anything to sabotage himself. Obviously, drug dealing isn't the safest thing to do, but he shares his story from being a child up through his success and now, and it was really interesting. I like his perspective on a lot of things, including health and fitness. He also shares a lot of stories, drama, beef between him and other rappers, which was just interesting. What I really like about this and respect about 50 Cent in this book is how vulnerable he is. So he knows he's the shit, to be honest. Like, he is a very cocky person, but he also knows when he does something stupid or he does something wrong, and he is not afraid to admit that even in this book. So he's very humble about his mistakes while still being confident, I guess you could say. And I find that really respectful because he's not afraid to, you know, say that. Like, obviously he put that in a book. All right, here's a couple of lines. So he said, "It's not enough just to say you want to work hard. You have to commit to lifestyle choices that allow you to have the energy, focus, and stamina to actually do the work too." So this was talking about committing to a clean lifestyle. Again, he's a very healthy person. He works out. He eats pretty clean from what he talks about. I wish he even expanded more on this topic. Like, I would love to hear more about his day-to-day life, but I'm glad he put that in there because it made a lot of sense. No matter what situation or setting you find yourself in, you don't ever want to depend on anything or any other person to make you feel in control and comfortable. That sense of confidence should always come from within, not from an external source. This is too long to read. I'm gonna put a photo up on my blog. It's a story of a man who went to prison and how he changed his life there. So I do recommend you check that out. This is my favorite line of like life. "At the end of the day, I like betting on sure things, and the only sure thing you can always count on 100% of the time is yourself." Love it. That is like perfect. This one's actually a quote from someone else. Sigmund Freud once said, "Most people do not really want freedom because freedom involves responsibility, and most people are frightened of responsibility." Give it a shot though. It's a really good book. I really like it, and you can learn a lot from him. Man's Search for Meaning. I've had this for a few years now, and I tried reading it before and I never finished it. I don't know why. It's by Viktor Frankl, and Viktor Frankl was in a concentration camp or various concentration camps for 3 years, a total of 3 years from my understanding. This book was really sad to me. Just, you know, it's the Holocaust, and just knowing and understanding what they did to people, human beings at these concentration camps is really sad and really devastating. And I found myself feeling really grateful while reading this because I was reading it from the comfort of my warm bed, my apartment. I had food, I had my clothes, I had the freedom to do what I wanted to do and not be controlled by another man. This is probably one of the best books I've ever read, just in general, because it really puts things into perspective. He shares the stories that he went through, the experience that he had at the concentration camps, talked a lot about what he saw. And so it is quite sad. That's just the reality of it. But he also it's on logotherapy, which is just having a will to live because you find meaning in your life. And he talks a lot on that. Again, I tabbed this one quite a bit, highlighted quite a bit. So let me read the lines that I have. "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." This is also a really good book to read during this time. Like, you know, with 2020, a lot of people had a bad year, a tough year, and this is good. This is a really good book to read right now. The Latin word finis has two meanings, the end or the finish, and a goal to reach. A man who could not see the end of his provisional existence was not able to aim at an ultimate goal in life. He ceased living for the future in contrast to a man in normal life. So basically, what he was saying at the camps is that they saw no more purpose in living. They could not see what the point of getting out of the camps was. So that's when a lot of the people in the camps would start to die. Their health went bad. Obviously, they were in really shitty conditions, so that's going to happen. But, you know, he was in those same conditions and was able to push through that because he found meaning. And he even talks about how people who lose their job and then they find that that was their purpose or that was their passion, and so now they have no reason to live anymore, so they don't, you know? It's crazy. If one cannot change a situation that causes his suffering, he can still choose his attitude. So that's similar to that other one I just read. There is no grand purpose in the universe. It just is. There's no particular meaning in what decision you make today about how to act. He also has quotes in here from Sigmund Freud, so yep, this one's number 1 or number 2 as well. So I do recommend everybody to read this. The Checklist Manifesto, another one I got from the free library, and I'm gonna put back in there. I just have been waiting to film this video. This was my least favorite book of the year. It's by Atul Gawande, I'm not sure how to say it. Apparently he is a doctor, a surgeon. The Checklist Manifesto, How to Get Things Right. It's basically this long book on making a checklist and how you should make a checklist for more success in the things that you do. And he shares different stories. Granted, they are very interesting stories because a lot of them are about surgeries, or there was even a lot on airplanes, like flying a plane and the checklist they use for that. However, this book really stressed me out because there were stories in here of, medical things and just flying airplanes and any normal life experience that you go through. And he shared stories of possible outcomes that could happen, negative outcomes, scary outcomes, that really stressed me out, and it created fears in me that I did not have before. So I never want to have surgery, that's for sure. As you can see, there's no tabs. There is literally nothing highlighted in here because it just was a book. Make checklists is the basic thing. So yeah, maybe this is good for somebody in the medical field, or I don't know. I don't recommend it, to be honest, and I have no lines to read to you. I reread this book as well, Your Best Year Ever by Michael Hyatt, a 5-step plan for achieving your most important goals. You can see I didn't have this one either, and for some reason, I was drawn to read this again. I think I read it in 2018 or 2019. I don't know, something about the way he delivers his message, I just don't resonate with. And it's not a bad book. The content is actually really good. Again, I think a lot of it is better for a beginner on their personal development journey or somebody who's new to goals. But I feel like, yeah, this is talking about going after goals and stuff. And I created like my goal achievement course. And I feel like I've just been so set in how I do things that this didn't really help me. And it's not much different from what I teach in that course. So I think that's why it's just like old news to me. So I wasn't really impressed by it. And I've read this before, but I did not highlight anything. Nothing really stood out to me. It's not a bad book at all. It's probably good for a lot of people to read, just not something that helped me. So again, I don't have any lines to read you from this, but it is a good plan to follow if you're interested, or you could just purchase my goal achievement course. Link is down in the description box. All right, the final book that I read in 2020, self-improvement book, is called Unstoppable, Inspiring Lessons from the Unstoppable You. My mom got me this for my birthday. I think she got it from some sort of thrift store. This is by Craig Conrad, and he was a teacher at a high school for word-working class, and I guess he would hold these Friday stories, and that made him a really popular teacher, and he made an impact on a lot of his students, or at least according to this book. Some of the stories were actually really good, and it almost was too perfect though. He had stories and examples that he apparently lived through that seemed almost too perfect, and it just, I don't know, it just seemed a little fluffed up there. I'm not sure if he's telling the truth in all of these things, but the stories were pretty impactful. I could see how, a high schooler would want to listen to those stories. This took me a lot longer to read than I expected. It does have good information. It is interesting. I liked the book, but there were quite a few stories in here that involved animals, fishing, crab fishing, and just sad stories to me that I don't want to hear the details of. He even told the story of the elephants at circuses being tied down, just in such great detail that I don't care for because, I'm vegan for the animals. So it's just, yeah. The other thing is that I looked this guy up. I looked up he talks about a lot of people, his former students who went to prison or who became athletes or famous people. And so I was looking them up each time, but I looked him up and I saw a photo of him trophy hunting, he was holding up a dead animal, and automatically I don't like that. So it's not a bad book though, but nothing life-changing. I didn't tab anything. Again, no lines from that one. Those are all the nonfiction books that I read in 2020. Again, I suggest Hustle Harder, Hustle Smarter by 50 Cent, as well as Man's Search for Meaning, because those are definitely the two best ones that I read. Let me know what you guys think of this video. Did you like how I gave the review of them? I honestly don't know what I'm doing when it comes to a book review. I also have really thought about making a book club. I just don't know how that works, how that goes. But I also read 5 fiction books in 2020, and I started reading fiction books in like September, I believe. So I am going to cover those on another video. So be on the lookout for that. If you prefer to read this, then the blog posts for all of this content will be linked down below, and you can see more of the quotes. I also took pictures of some of the quotes if they were too long, so go check that out and comment down below what you read in 2020, if you recommend any of those, or what you are reading now. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.